welcome. This webinar is about Cyber Advisor and particularly the Cyber Advisor Assessment Centre. In a minute, I'll hand over to Emma W from the NCSC. Emma's responsible for the Cyber Advisor programme there. I'm not going to steal her thunder and tell you too much about what she's going to say. Then you'll have me again, and I'm going to talk through how we developed the Cyber Advisor standard and what's expected of the Cyber Advisor and where you can get information from about the Cyber Advisor scheme. Then I'll hand over to Sarah Knowles. Sarah's one of the most experienced Cyber Advisor assessors that we have, and she's going to talk to you about the assessment. Now, she's been through the assessment herself because all of the Cyber Advisor assessors are Cyber Advisors, and the criteria for becoming an assessor is actually passing the assessment with a grade of 85% or higher. Then Ella from CyberScheme will talk a little bit more about their role in the assessment process. And then we're back to Sarah, who will talk through some of the common reasons why people fail the assessment to give you some pointers. Finally, there's nothing better than a personal experience. And Yusuf is going to talk you through her experience and provide some tips on preparing for the assessment. So without further ado, I will mute my microphone and I'll hand over to Emma W.
Great, thanks very much, Peter. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. I am indeed Emma W, Head of Cyber Essentials and Cyber Advisor here at the NCSC, the National Cyber Security Centre. So I'm here to talk about the NCSC view of Cyber Advisor, thank you, and our position and our support for the scheme. The NCSC's mission is to help make the UK the world's safest place to live and work online. The Cyber Advisor scheme contributes to that mission by supporting small and medium-sized enterprises to achieve a foundation in cybersecurity and help them to implement the Cyber Essentials controls. What are the Cyber Essentials controls? Well, there's 5 of them. They are secure configuration, user access control, malware protection, security update management, and firewalls. The Cyber Advisor scheme launched in May 2023. The scheme sets the standard and assesses cyber advisors both on their technical knowledge and having the competence to recommend solutions appropriate to the size of the organisation, and either implement the controls themselves or direct others to implement the controls. So it's important to emphasise that being a cyber advisor is not just about knowledge. You must be able to demonstrate all these skills to be successful, including teamworking, communication and influencing skills. And we're going to be hearing more about this later in the webinar. A cyber advisor works for an organisation called an assured service provider who also meets the appropriate security and quality requirements and carries the NCSC's assurance and recognition that they give good service and trusted advice. We, the NCSC, are proud that the organisations carry an NCSC badge and a listing on our own website. The NCSC is committed to supporting the growth of the Cyber Advisor scheme through its delivery partner, IASME. Projects include the funded Cyber Essentials programme that's been delivered via Cyber Advisors since 2023. NCSC and IASME continue to promote the service alongside Cyber Essentials in communications, both at in-person events and online. Other initiatives similar to the funded programme are now being discussed. In terms of our future pipeline of work and future plans for the scheme, we're working with our colleagues elsewhere in NCSC in the Economy and Society team on the development of My Cyber Toolkit, which some of you may have seen. I think the beta is live now. This is an interactive tool built to help customers implement basic cybersecurity protections and to work towards Cyber Essentials certification. We are working with MSPs because we know that this sector has a huge impact on how cybersecurity is delivered and managed among small and medium organisations. We have the Trainee Cyber Essentials Assessor Scheme just kicking off. This involves selecting candidates who have aptitude and interest in cybersecurity, but no experience or qualifications as yet, and training them to become Cyber Essentials assessors in 2 years under experienced qualified mentors. We've also developed, obviously, this webinar today as we're all here to help you find out more about the Cyber Advisor scheme and decide whether it's for you. Also, I have a question to throw back at you for you to be thinking about for later. As people who are interested in Cyber Advisor, what else would you like to see from us? What can we, the NCSC, IASME and the Cyber Scheme do to help and support your interest? The NCSC would like to see more cyber advisors in the cybersecurity industry to help the many small organisations who often find it difficult to know where to go to get good, cost-effective cybersecurity advice. It's not an entry-level route. It demands this level of skill that's not just about technical expertise, but as I said earlier, it's very much about designing appropriate solutions for different customers, and it's about communicating with those customers in plain English. The assessment is demanding. We are confident through ongoing evaluation that it is set at the correct level. And one of the reasons we're here today is to help candidates understand more about what is expected in that assessment. A practical point as well, while we're here, the assessments are held in many locations around the UK and Northern Ireland. So try and make it possible for as many people as possible to take part. The Cyber Essentials research and statistics always speak for themselves. They make companies more resilient. 92% fewer insurance claims are made by organisations who have Cyber Essentials controls in place. They make these companies more trusted. 89% of organisations would recommend certification to other organisations like theirs. They make companies more competitive. 69% of those with Cyber Essentials believe that it's increased their market competitiveness. And it makes them more informed. 88% of companies believe that Cyber Essentials has improved their understanding of cybersecurity risks. So to sum up from me today then, before I hand back over to Peter, it's really encouraging to see so many people here today. I hope you get lots out of the webinar. I hope you find the information helpful, and I hope you ask lots of questions. There's lots of further information available on the NCSC website, ncsc.gov.uk, or IASME's website. Thank you very much. I'll now hand you back to Peter.
Thanks, Emma. Yes, I realised I didn't actually introduce myself at the beginning. I'm Peter Looms, and I work for IASME and was involved in the setting up of the Cyber Advisor scheme, which is I'm going to take you through now. When the requirements for the Cyber Advisor was first considered, the standard was set following the principles of ISO 17024, but 7024 is the ISO standard for certifying people, and it's the method followed by organisations like the Institute for Apprenticeships when defining apprenticeship requirements and T-levels, and it's a very structured approach. The first thing you start off with are duties. What are you expecting this role or the person coming out of this certification to be doing? And I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll give you a reference to where they are at the end. But in this case, we identified 6 duties. Now, against each duty, let's take duty 1, conduct a Cyber Essentials gap analysis. Against that first duty, we then identify the knowledge areas that the candidate would need to have in order to be effective in that. If you look at this, you'll see K2 and K4 look at other advice available from the NCSC, and also being able to analyse the organisation against a wider threat model. They may think they only need Cyber Essentials, but when you engage with them, you might identify threats that are wider than the commodity-based threat of Cyber Essentials. K8 is about implementing Cyber Essentials controls in an appropriate way for the organisation, and you'll hear us say this quite a lot today. It's about the appropriateness and the proportionality of the controls that you implement. For example, not all Cyber Essentials controls need to be technical. Some can be dealt with by policy or procedure in smaller organisations. Having identified the knowledge that people need, we then identify the skills. So we've still got the K1 to 12 there. The observant of you will know that 10 will see that 10's missing. 10 does exist, it's just not mapped against duty 1. And they're the 6 skills. So I'll pick out skill 5 in particular. The cyber advisor will be dealing with small businesses. Some will have no technical knowledge. And this skill area is about communicating the requirements to a business in the way that they'll understand and the way that makes the requirement relevant to that business. And then finally, there are the behaviours. And these behaviours sit across all of the duties, knowledge and skills areas as a standard. And that's a professional approach, collaborative approach, showing that you're working together with the customer, and a non-judgmental approach. We're putting in the solution that's right for the customer, not necessarily the solution that we think they should be having. And I know that's a bit of a moot point. And this is the area that the assessment will look at. It'll look at all of the knowledge, all of the skills, and it will assess your behaviours. The final part of ISO 17024 is the assessment. And there are 18 assessment areas that we look at. And the assessment centres have been designed to test as many of these as we possibly can. I'm not going to go through them, but they are mapped to the knowledge, skills and behaviours. And I'm sure Sarah will touch on this as she goes through her piece of work. So the cyber advisor role then. The requirement is to understand the requirements for IT infrastructure, other relevant NCSC guidance, and other relevant security guidance. And also understand the business. And there's an overlap there where we're looking for you to apply the requirements proportionately and appropriately to that size of business. And if we look at that a little bit further, the knowledge is requirements, other relevant guidance, and other relevant security guidance. The understanding of the business is a skill. Working with the customer to understand how their business functions. And the real crux of this is the second skill, which is about applying all of that knowledge and understanding appropriately to the business. So why have we gone down such a line with the cyber advisor? That's because ultimately you'll be working under the brand of the NCSC. This is the badge of the Assured Service Provider Cyber Advisor. It clearly states that you are approved by the NCSC, and it's important that we protect both the reputation of the NCSC and its brand. Now, all of the information I've just talked about is in the Cyber Advisor Scheme standard, which is available through, well, I'll talk about the place it's available at the minute, but it's on the NCSC website. It's available through our website and the Cyber Schemes website. Let's have a look at where all the information is then, because there's a stack of information available about the Cyber Advisor Scheme. Thankfully, all of it's in electronic form, so you don't have to wade through all of these books. Let's start with what's on the NCSC website. The NCSC is general information about the scheme, and it's aimed at the users of the service and the suppliers of the service. In the information for service providers section, and there are details of the scheme and how to join the scheme. as well. And there you'll see that's where the standard is at the bottom of the page. Website. The first part of the IASME website looks at general information. Then there's an option to become a cyber advisor, and this provides some basic information, but provides a link to the important requirements for becoming a cyber advisor. And there's also information about how to become a assured service provider as well, which Emma touched on a few moments ago. All cyber advisors have to work under an organisation that is an assured service provider. The third location for information, and there is lots of information here, is the Cyberscheme website. Again, time limits is going through all of these, but these are the main headings from their website. There's a document there which talks about preparing for the assessment. It's a very extensive document and tells you really all you need to know about preparing for the assessment. But let's look at some of the other things. There's the Cyber Essentials requirements. There's a link there to the latest version of the requirements. That links through to the NCSC website. There is a link through to the Cyber Advisor Standard. We've talked about that. Quite usefully, there is an example scenario, so the sorts of things that you will be tested on in the assessment. So there's a sample scenario and there's a sample short form question and answer to that question, as there is actually in the preparing for the assessment document that I've just mentioned. We can't give full exam papers because it's not that type of exam, or it's not that type of assessment where we could give you 100 sample multiple choice questions. It's just not that type of assessment. There is also information about the assessment centre and the joining instructions for the assessment centre. And finally, there are the assessment criteria. So lots of information for you to go and look through. And finally, from me, there is also the opportunity to ask questions via email. You can ask them of Cyberscheme via email, and you can ask them to IASME via email. The links to the emails are on the website. But those of you that know IASME, our standard is info@. So that's the role of the cyber advisor, how we came up with the role of the cyber advisor. And now I'm going to hand over to Sarah, and Sarah's going to talk you through the assessment.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Knowles. I'm one of the co-founders of ShiftKey Cyber. We're a governance, risk and compliance information and cybersecurity consultancy company. We offer numerous services in the sort of GRC area, such as virtual CISO and ISO 27001 implementations. But we're also a certification body for Cyber Essentials, and we were one of the first companies to become an NCSC assured service provider for Cyber Essentials. So my role as a cyber advisor assessor is to help run the assessment centres that Peter's just talked about, and basically determine whether candidates are at the appropriate level to become cyber advisors. So today I've been asked to talk to you about the assessment, how it's set up, and then later on I'll go through some of the common reasons why people have failed the assessment. Okay, so the assessment itself is in two parts. So the first part is carried out online, and this is on a purpose-built web-based platform. And then the second part is the discussion element. There is one scenario that covers the whole assessment. So, you haven't got to sort of say, oh, hang on, what question am I, what am I answering? It's one scenario covers the whole assessment. So you can start to build up a picture of what the customer environment looks like. The assessment itself is open book, so you've got full access to the internet and also any other material or files that you may already have. One thing that is absolutely key, this is covered in the joining instructions, but please do bring a laptop with you. We have had candidates turn up without one. Okay, so the part one, the online platform. So there is a set of questions based on that scenario, and each question is then split into two elements, which are loosely linked by a topic. So, for example, this could be malware protection or securing mobile phones. So the first part is it's a multiple choice question. So there's a question, and then there are 4 possible answers. Only one is correct. So there's no trick questions. Question, 1 correct answer. Underneath that, there is what we call the short form question. So this is most likely to be set up in the form of a question from the customer, which requires a written response. And you can write this as if you are either responding to an email inquiry, or it could be almost like a paragraph or 2 paragraphs out of an excerpt from a larger report that, again, you've been sending to the customer. Absolutely no difference in how you set up your written response. It's however you feel comfortable writing. So we've got no preference on that. It doesn't make a difference to how we assess it. And then part 2 is the discussion phase of the assessment. So we move to that once the online part is concluded. So this is a recorded discussion, and this is carried out between the candidate and the assessor. So it's an audio recording, and this is used for moderation purposes. So in this discussion phase, what we're looking at as an assessor, we're looking to explore the answers that you've provided. So again, if you sort of think of it that you have made your final report to the customer, they've digested it, and now they've got some follow-up questions. But it's absolutely key that you continue to respond during this phase as you have in the short form. So you are still engaging with the customer, and so you keep up that conversation. Okay, so how we come to the marking scheme. The multiple choice element is fairly straightforward. So it's 1 point for a correct answer, no points for an incorrect answer. You do need to score 80% or more on this section. So if you score less than this, regardless of what you score in the rest of the assessment, you are unable to obtain a passing score. So say it's really important that you can score that 80%. But say remember, the whole assessment, while you carried it out on the online platform, it's all open book, so you've got full access to the internet. So if you need to look things up, you can do. Okay, the marking scheme for the short form and the discussion, it's obviously different to the multiple choice element. So each of the answers receives a grade from one of the following, and I'll sort of go through how you are awarded a score for each of these. So if you don't answer the question, or you provide an incorrect answer, you'll be scored as insufficient. So it's fairly straightforward. But then we have sort of 3 criteria that we give consideration to for the rest of it. So starting with the mandatory point of, has the question been answered sort of in its most basic form? So if the candidate does just that, they'll be scored as below expectations. The other 2 criteria that we tend to look at is whether or not the candidate has provided any added value to the customer, and whether the response has been explained sort of using business language. By that we mean it's non-technical. If you remember that the cyber advisor, the whole purpose of the role of the cyber advisor, you're likely to be engaging with people who are not dealing with technical issues on a day-to-day basis. It's not their day job. They're not fully au fait with all of the sort of the technical jargon that we tend to use on a daily basis. So, remember to engage with the customer that they don't necessarily understand all of the technical terms. So if a candidate, provides one of these additional factors, they'll be scored as a meets expectations. And if the candidate's able to provide an answer that hits all three of those criteria, they'll receive a comprehensive score. All of these scores are added together from the short form and the discussion, and then added again to the multiple choice, and an overall average is calculated. And if you receive a score of 75% or more, you have passed the assessment. So feedback, we always provide feedback to everybody, regardless whether it's a pass or a failing score that's been awarded. We don't provide details of a particular question, so we're keeping the integrity of the exam as confidential as we can. But what we do is provide feedback on a particular area where, if there's a strength or an area of concern, for example. So, we will provide feedback on that. And we're trying to, the feedback's always aligned to those knowledge, skills and behaviours that are in the requirements to be a cyber advisor. So again, as Peter's pointed that out, take a look at those documents, have a look at those KSBs, and look at what you're doing when you're preparing for the assessment.
Cool, thank you. So as Peter mentioned, my name's Ella Chamberlain. I'm the operations manager at the Cyber Scheme. So I'm here to talk about the Cyber Scheme's role in the assessment. So we facilitate the assessment independently on behalf of IASME. So this involves everything from creating question sets, booking the assessments in, sending results out, and everything in between. So we run the assessment on a bespoke assessment platform that we had created specifically for the Cyber Advisor exam, with a keen focus on security. So you're sent a magic link via email, and through that link you access the platform, and you lose access when the assessment is finished. So we have a team of expert assessors, Sarah being one of them, helping us run the assessment. And as Peter mentioned, what we mean by expert is they're all current cyber advisors who have previously taken the assessment and passed, and are now practicing in the role as a cyber advisor. So Sarah touched on this previously as well. So the feedback we provide, for each assessment, you'll receive a feedback form that will outline the grade boundaries that you need to pass, as well as the percentage you scored in each section, and some personalised constructive feedback from the assessor, with the aim to release these as quickly as possible. We sort of have a goal of within 5 working days, so you won't be waiting too long to hear back. And some things we focus on to make the assessment a little more accessible. So accommodating reasonable adjustment requests. So anything that can help make the assessment process a bit more pain-free for those that might need it. And I'll sort of dig into that in the next slide. And meeting regional demands. So we have a number of assessment centres around the country that we try and sort of cycle through on a regular basis. So here's just some examples of reasonable adjustment requests we've met in the past. So extra time, earplugs, listening to music, adjusting the lighting in the assessments. We're quite open with reasonable adjustment requests. If there's something that has helped you in assessments in the past, to the best of our abilities and within reason, we will try and accommodate these. So rather than having a list of all of the things that you possibly can choose from on the website, we try and discuss it and tailor it to the needs of the candidate. And another thing, just to make it a bit more accessible, is in the joining instructions that each candidate is sent prior to the assessment, there are images of the assessment centre, so you know what to expect. All preparation documents needed to help you prepare for the assessment, and information on what to expect in terms of the exam format, what to bring, timings, and that really helpful guidance to candidate document that Peter mentioned earlier. That's very comprehensive. That's all in those joining instructions that each candidate receives prior to the assessment. Thank you. So this is just a list of our current in-use assessment centres that we cycle through the most regularly, but we have done ones in other areas like Cardiff before, but Cardiff and Cheltenham are really close, and Cheltenham's our home, so that's where the vast majority of our assessments are held, but we cycle through the others pretty regularly, and we're open to expand if the demand is there. And if you don't see a date at an assessment centre location that you want in our booking calendar, please get in touch and we will add you to a wait list and let you know when those assessment centres open up. And yeah, so please head to our website. As Peter mentioned earlier, it's got lots and lots of resources to explore. There's contact forms on the website, so you can contact us if you have any questions. And the booking forms there for dates, regularly updated dates for the assessment centres. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Right, so we've got some, we've identified a number of common issues that we see in the assessments, which leads to candidates receiving a failing score. So I'm just going to go through a few of these and just sort of hopefully share some lessons learnt with you all. So I've grouped it into sort of 6 common reasons, and so I'll just run through these. So the first one, running out of time. So time management is an absolute key skill for a cyber advisor. Again, it's listed in those KSBs. The online part of the assessment is quite time pressured, and quite often candidates tend to spend a lot of time answering the first couple of questions, realise that they've used up half of their allocated time and then rush the rest of the assessment. So this means that answers either don't go into enough detail, and so a good enough score can't be awarded, or questions are just missed altogether, which obviously we receives a zero score on those. So as I say, running out of time is quite impactful, and can have quite a negative impact on the final score that's awarded. So it's really important to sort of pace yourself through the assessment. So top tip would be look at how many questions there are, look at how long you've got, allocate yourself 10 minutes a question or whatever it works out as, and make sure that you've got a little bit of time left at the end to just go through and revise your answers. And then sort of the second thing that we tend to find is that a lot of people answer the multiple choice question and then go on and explain their answer in the short form bit. Now, as I said earlier, the questions are part of the same question number, but they're different elements, and although they are linked loosely by a topic, they are completely separate. So it's absolutely key that these are answered separately. So as I say, you're answering your multiple choice, then read the question for the short form and answer that separately. So the next 4 reasons I've gone into a bit more detail on the following slides, so I've expanded on these in a bit more detail, so we'll go through those. This one is not answering the question that's been asked. So here we've got a sample question that's indicative of what may be seen in the assessment. So the question goes along the lines of, how should a company manage malware protection on mobile phones issued to staff? So we can see from the response that a question, or the question that's been asked, hasn't actually been answered. So it's a technically correct response. Mobile phones should be protected by appropriate password and PIN controls, but they're not controls that you would put in place for malware protection. So it hasn't addressed that question. So when we talk around receiving an insufficient score, this is a prime example to say the question itself has not been answered. So as I say, make sure you're reading the question and that you're putting the right answer in. So as I say, this would score insufficient on the assessment. So again, another problem that we tend to see is not providing sort of sufficient detail in the response. So here we can see like the end part of the question. Does this impact the scope of the Cyber Essentials assessment? Obviously, there'd be some text before that. Candidate has said yes. So assuming that is actually correct, and that is a factual answer. So it would receive a the low expectation score because it's technically a correct answer, but there's no added value, and there's no sort of narrative around why that is the correct answer. So as I say, we'll try and get some more information in there to provide to the customer. So we talk about not using business language. So again, here we've got another end part of the question, asking the candidate to explain a number of controls that could be implemented for Cyber Essentials. Now, as I say, this response is actually complete gibberish. It was a bit of a test to see how many acronyms that I could fit onto the page. A non-technical person who, as I say, is most likely to be the individual you are dealing with on a cyber advisory engagement, they're not going to understand any of this. They don't understand the acronyms. And so providing this type of response isn't going to score you those extra marks. So, again, you're looking at receiving a below expectations score for this because you haven't explained it well enough to the customer. And then finally, we do have candidates who provide completely incorrect information. So if we can see here, the question has provided some details of the steps that a customer's taken to protect her mobile phone. She's stating that she's installed some software on it to protect it. Is this sufficient? And the candidate has answered, yes, this is absolutely fine. There are no other actions that need to be taken. So if anyone doesn't actually see what's wrong with this, then have a look at the requirements for IT infrastructure document. In there, you will see that anti-malware software is only suitable for devices that are running Windows or Mac OS. They're not suitable for mobile phones. So the advice that's been provided in this answer is completely incorrect and would obviously cause the customer to have an issue with their Cyber Essentials certification. So again, going back to this would score an insufficient response.
Hi everyone, my name is Yusra. I'm technical director of an MSP called Dialergeek based in the Southwest. I did my cyber advisor exam down in Cheltenham last year in May. So I've been brought basically to explain kind of my point of view. So what I've done is I'm going to explain exactly all the bits of content I used, what emails I opened, what bits I thought would be helpful to other candidates. So if I was, in this call and I needed to, join this session to figure out what's going on, what I would say to myself if I was doing the exam now. Great. So this is the initial email I received. I received this email basically as soon as I booked the exam. And I clicked on the Cyber Advisor joining instructions. I also read the guest blog as well, but I clicked on the joining instructions and it took me to the website. And in that website, it took me straight to the Cyber Scheme website. And if you scroll down about 2/3 of the way down, there's something called the Assessment Center Guide. And in that Assessment Center Guide, there's a PowerPoint. And in that PowerPoint is something that I found very useful. And that useful thing was a video demo of the assessment platform. Which was kind of like a gold mine for me, because personally I just want to see what the assessment platform looks like. I've done other kinds of exams, and sometimes they have some kind of demo. So this showed me exactly what I would expect on the exam day, and kind of how the system would look. So I would definitely recommend checking out that PowerPoint just to see for yourselves what the assessment platform actually looks like. So there were two main prerequisite readings that I did. Of course, this is an open book exam, but you're not going to have any time at all. You'll see in the next slide when I talk about timings. So there was two main areas that I focused on. One was the requirements document. This is because this will have the actual facts itself. This document is very useful for answering the multiple choice questions. So if I was you, I would definitely just read that, memorize it as much as you can, because that will save you time when you're actually doing an exam. The other one is the Cyber Essentials Knowledge Hub. So you might not actually know that, this hub. So this is a website where it essentially tells you if certain operating systems are in scope or out of scope for all the different operating systems. So if in this scenario you'll have, like a Windows 10 device with a certain model, you'll know exactly if it's in scope or certain kinds of routers and things like that. So That's very helpful because it just tells you pretty straight up if something's in scope or not, to once again help you answer the questions from the scenario. So this is pre-exam prep. So these are things that I would definitely just make sure you have in place. So number one, make sure you bring a laptop, as Sarah mentioned earlier. Make sure it's fully charged. Make sure it's connected to the center Wi-Fi. I believe when I went down to Cheltenham, there's free Wi-Fi there, so I just connected to that. In case it goes down, maybe have like a backup, phone to have maybe like a 4G backup or something, just in case. Make sure it doesn't auto restart during the exam. My device has got MDM software on there, so you don't want it to restart. Make sure it's fully up to date, and you can connect to the Wi-Fi. So if you've got any kind of antivirus settings that blocks other Wi-Fi's, make sure that that's all disabled by IT. Make sure you're logged into your email account, because you're going to receive the exam link into your email account. So it will be the same email account that you received the invitation link that you saw in my initial email. So make sure that's logged in, so you're not spending time logging into that. That's the email address that I got mine from. So if you can just get your IT team to whitelist that one as well, if there's like a really strict email security for you guys. And I made sure that the one document and the one website was preloaded, just in case the Wi-Fi was bad or something. I had low hopes, so I just made sure everything was preloaded. I downloaded the documents so I could view it offline. And yeah, I made sure I brought a Windows laptop. I didn't bring a Mac, even though that's my usual device, just in case, once again, there was any issues accessing the link or the website. A notepad and pen, which you guys will see what that's for next. And a quick bathroom break before the exam begins, because obviously it's nerve-wracking, and you don't want to take any breaks during the exam, because you'll definitely probably run out of time. So timing. So I'm big on timings, because I failed so many exams just by spending too much time on one question. So that's 120 minutes. So you're gonna spend the first 10 minutes, which is what I did, reading the scenario and making notes. This is why you need a notepad, paper, and pen. And then you've got 110 minutes to answer 12 multiple choice questions and 12 short form answers. So the multiple choice questions and the short form answers is on the top half and the bottom half of the page. So you'll have 2 questions essentially. So reading this scenario, so I just added a screenshot of what the example scenario looks like, and there's a link there as well, which Peter mentioned at the beginning. 5-10 minutes max. If you're quick at reading, 5 minutes. If you're bad at reading and you're slow at picking information, 10 minutes max. I kind of put together a one-sheet summary of the key info from the scenario. So you're not just reading for fun, you're kind of doing active reading to try and get the key bits of information out. So what I did is I just had someone's name. I'd be like, okay, Sarah, she's in HR, she's non-technical. And I put that down on the piece of paper. So I had a list of everyone's name. I believe there's probably up to 10 or 12 names. So just to have a concept in terms of how many people you might potentially be asked about in the questions. How big the company is, what their opening hours are, what countries they're in, if they're remote, if they're in the office, what their operating systems are. So that's what the scenario is going to cover. And that's important because when you're answering the questions, you basically have to kind of speed run knowing a whole company within 10 minutes. So when you're answering the questions, you have to pretend as if you have read about them and you've spent months researching about them and things like that. So the other reason why I say put down a notepad and pen, to take a notepad and pen with you, is because you can't see the scenario and the questions at the same time. So a scenario isn't like a window that pops up, it's like a window that flips. So you'll have like the questions, and then you'll press the scenario button, and then it'll take you to the scenario, and then you can't see the questions at the same time. And you can't do any kind of split screen either. So the scenario, you really have to absorb the scenario, because otherwise you're just going to keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So definitely make sure you read that scenario properly and you write down the notes as well for that. So the multiple choice questions, these just straightforward. They're going to be factual answers, so you need technical knowledge. There's no way to sort of talk your way out of that. You just have to know it. Read the requirements documents. If you're bad at sort of certain areas, there's one thing that kind of surprised me, which is obviously in one of the questions. This will be shown in the assessment platform. You might get directed to a page outside you need to look at specific configurations to be able to answer the questions. So it could be anything from VPN to firewalls, LAN configuration. So if you're bad or weak at any kind of networking, just make sure you brush up on those skills before the exam as well. The short form questions, okay, yeah, so as Sarah mentioned, it's not related to the multiple choice, so it's going to be below the multiple choice questions. You're going to have one statement at the top, as seen in the screenshot. So this is, by the way, this is all from the assessment platform demo. So this is why I said it's very important to watch the video, because it will help you guys understand exactly how it's going to look. The thing I did, so my tactic was to just do an email for every single question. Just pretend it's like an agony aunt column and you're just writing back to someone again and again. And you just have to make it as sort of easily understandable to the person as well. So it will also say things like, or, it will say, if the question is coming from Sarah from HR, or you'll know if the question is coming from, I don't know, John from engineering, then from your cheat sheet that you've written down from the scenario, you'll know, okay, this question is from John. I can be more technical with him. So in the email, I'll add more, technical bits. And they also want things like sources. So this is why I said have the requirements document open, so you can just add some quotes to back up your point as well. So think of it more like an English language type of exam, instead of it being like an actual sort of technical exam as well. The discussion, yeah. So Sarah also mentioned this one as well. So in my head, I was like, this is role play. So if anyone's good at acting, this is, is exactly where you guys will shine. So this is a role play discussion. So the examiner is going to be someone from the 7 to 10 people listed in the scenario. So it could be anyone from the managing director, or someone technical, or someone non-technical. So it's going to be as if you're speaking to one of them, and they're going to bring up all the things you've mentioned from the past 12 short form questions, all the multiple choice questions, and they're going to be like, but why? What's wrong? Think of it like sort of like a grandma that is asking you question after question after question. So this is soft skills, so you need to be able to sort of explain it to them straightforward. They're going to follow up and be like, but why did you put this? Or what's wrong with this? Or why can't we do this? Or why can't we do that? So you have to be very confident. You have to just know what you're talking about. The other thing to mention is because you're in exam mode, you might think you have to have all the questions in your head, but this is an open book exam. So just like you would in a real meeting, if someone is like, oh, but our devices are out of date, and you're like, I've totally forgotten everything from the scenario, you can easily just be like, oh, just hold on 1 second, John. Let me just consult my notes and let me check the Cyber Essentials website just to see what. Oh, here you go. You can turn your laptop around and be like, look, John, this is in scope, this is out of scope, this is what the NCC said. So exactly how you would speak to them in real life. So you have to kind of not be in that exam mode, and remember that you can consult the internet, and just like you would in real life as well. And exam results. So I just put mine in because if it was me, I just want to see it. So this is exactly what I received. It took about a week after my exam. You can see the multiple choice. I believe you have to get 80% to pass. So if it's 12 questions, you have to get 10 right. Otherwise, you'll probably fail. So make sure the technical stuff is definitely good. With the short form assessment and the discussion, this is a combined average. So if you're a bit below on the short form assessment and you haven't answered it quite right, if you do really well in the discussion, you could bring that average up as well, or vice versa as well. And then you have to pass both areas in order to get an overall outcome, and then you'll get a candidate feedback as well. So and then that's essentially how you pass or you fail. And I believe that's everything from me.
Brilliant, thank you.